Hello friends, I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Always. I've spent the day working on some D&D resources and it's been a blast. And I told you on Friday that my daughters had asked for me to introduce them to Dungeons & Dragons. And I was like, yeah, we can totally do that. So I bought the Dungeons & Dragons starter set. Because I don't have Dungeons & Dragons stuff anymore. I don't have role-playing stuff. In fact, I gave all of my role-playing books and miniatures and all my resources away like about 4 or 5 months ago to a coworker friend. And then they asked, like, we want to learn how to play D&D. And I said, okay, well, 5th edition is supposed to be better anyway, so we'll start there. But I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I think that Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition was my introduction to the hobby. I'm not positive that, I played Car Wars, I played Battletech, I played D&D. I had friends that played different things, but I think Dungeons & Dragons was really kind of my first. I had a friend named Ryan. He was my best friend ever. I loved him dearly, and I kind of screwed that relationship up. I was kind of a shitty kid, and we ended up going to different high schools, and so we kind of fell apart, but he introduced me to Dungeons & Dragons. He introduced me to Magic the Gathering, and we really were very much into fantasy and mysticism together. And so he introduced me to it. We played a lot of Dungeons & Dragons. We played in Scouts. I played a lot. And so when I got to my adult years, when I was in the military and started to play with military people, people started asking me to be the dungeon master. They started saying, hey, can you run these games? And I ran a few when I was a kid, but that wasn't my thing. I was much better suited as a player when I was younger. But as I grew older, I was like, yeah, I can run games. And, I love to make things, handouts and things. So all of my resources are gone. I had maps, I had, campaign settings and all sorts of stuff. I had created my own monsters for different level character, I had all that stuff, and I had minis, and I still have my battle map, thankfully, like from the early 2000s, an old school battle map. But thinking about running this for my kids, I watched a video recently, yesterday. It was sent to me yesterday, and I'll put a link in the description if I remember to do that. And it was 2 gentlemen talking about playing Dungeons & Dragons with like 7 kids. And they talked about their experiences, and I really was like, oh, you're right. I was planning on running it with my kids with no minis, no map, just talking them through it, but I decided that probably wasn't a great idea. So at some point I redrew the map from the starter set with just the knowledge that's available to the players at the start of the game. And this is just printer paper, but in my youth I would have got some sketch pad paper and tea stained it and torn the edges and drawn a nice map. So I got that as a handout for them so they can at least visualize where they are in the world. You start in Neverwinter and you're traveling south to Phandalin, which is some little ruined town, So it gives them at least an idea of the area of the world they're in. But then I watched this video from these gentlemen and they talked about needing minis. Like, kids need to have a visual understanding of what's going on, and they're right. So I don't have minis, but what I was able to do was find, and I'll put a link to this also, a gentleman named, I don't remember his name. He created like a starter set companion kit, and it includes like a breakdown of each of the encounters, and it included little 1-inch by 1-inch artwork of all of the various creatures and characters that are included in the starter set. So I said, my friend Janelle said, you can use, pieces of paper on the map. And I was like, oh, that's a great idea. And she's like, just cut some 1-inch pieces of paper, let the kids pick out, something from the internet that represents their character, print it off, and you've got a character token. And I was like, hey, I have a wood shop. I know where I can get lots of 1-inch by 1-inch squares. So I came down last night and I cut a bunch of 1-inch squares, and now I've glued on some artwork that we'll be able to use for minis, and this will just give them a really good representation of everything that's going on the map. And I got some dry erase markers so I can draw on my battle map the areas that they're in. And my oldest daughter wants to play a wizard, and I found a website called Hex Nexus or something. I'll put a link again. It's a Russian site, but I'll put it in the description. And you can print off spell cards. So I printed off 2 of each spell card for her because first level wizards can pick 2 spells. So maybe she's going to take 2 magic missiles or 2 sleeps or something. So she can have her 2 spell cards, and when she uses one, she just discards it until she rests, and then she gets them back. So this will give her a really good representation of what spells are available to her. I also printed off 0 level cantrips, so she'll have those available, you know, whenever she wants. So I made these, and I've been, you know, I think this is enough stuff to get me through the part 1 of the adventure, and I think that's probably, we're going to call it at the end of part 1 anyway, regardless of whether we finish that tomorrow or we have to play through it on the weekend. Then that'll give me a chance to kind of reset, make more tokens for all the creatures that we're going to face in part 2, probably hand draw some new stuff, some new handouts, and see where we go from there. But the point of all of this is, I'm having a blast, you know? I think that one thing that I really loved about D&D when I was a kid was just the like the arts and crafts aspect. I loved the creativity of it. I loved creating stories and creating worlds that characters can live in, but I also loved creating maps and creating handouts and creating props. I would create, you know, I had a friend who didn't believe, you know, I argued with him that he couldn't carry thousands of gold on him, and he was like, yeah, I can. And so I bought, you know, gold dollars, or I think I bought half dollars actually, and like hundreds of them, and put them in a bag and said, here, you try to carry this around, you know, imagine carrying thousands of those, you know. And I made props for things that I was handing out to players. I made special, I used to have special, I think that, I don't know what D&D calls them, but there's these special tokens you can give players that they can spend to add an extra die to their roll. And I made special ones of those. I'm just using poker chips for my girls because that's what I have right now. But I'm piecing it together kind of similar to the way that I used to do this. And I'm really enjoying the creativity of it. And, you know, at least making these little tokens was really fun. I don't know. I haven't actually pulled the battle map out to see if they are 1 inch by 1 inch. But they should be close enough. And I can get an adventure going with the kids. So I'm excited to do this. I'm excited for them to play it. I'm excited for them to experience the world. And I hope that they enjoy it. If they do, we're probably going to keep playing. I think the adventure that comes in the box set, the Lost Treasure of Fandalin or something, it's designed for 4 to 5 players. And my girls have never played, so I'm going to give them an NPC, and then I'm probably going to do a pre-adventure. I'm going to create something, a little encounter that they can experience, you know, just 1 goblin or something, you know, 1 orc, probably not an orc, but 1 something that they can experience, maybe a couple of traps or a, you know, locked chest or something, so they can get the idea of how this plays out before they get thrown into the main adventure, because I don't know that they'll have a full grasp. So I'm going to try to lead them into it. We'll see what happens, but at least I have some cool props now I've been having fun making, and I just wanted to share that with you. So if you have any other ideas for how I can make this game more engaging for my kids, let me know in the comments down below. I really appreciate it. Thank you for watching, as always. Thank you for liking and commenting and subscribing and being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you, and I will see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know to sound smart is bourgeois. It is an adjective meaning pertaining to or relating to the middle class as opposed to the upper class or royalty on one end and the peasants or common laborers on the other. The representation of the garrison thus turned out to be incomparably more moderate and bourgeois than other soldier masses. Leon Trotsky, a Bolshevik revolutionary and Marxist theorist. Bourgeois. B-O-U-R-G-E-I-O-I-S.